The Oracle of Luna is a podcast with me, Bridget Engels, as your host. Here we have conversations with real live, present-day goddesses who are actively and courageously doing their magical work in the world. Each episode is a bewitching journey with relevant discussions on topics such as Wiccan pagan spirituality, writing, culture, magical practices, art, ritual, and the craft in its many forms. Merry meet! Welcome to another episode of the Oracle of Luna podcast. I'm Bridget Engels, your host, and today I am honored to speak with Karen Tate. Karen is a thought leader, speaker, author, and activist. She has been named one of the 13 most influential women in goddess spirituality and a wisdom keeper of the women's spirituality movement. She is a popular public speaker on the role of the goddess in history and in modern culture. Karen started the original and longest-running goddess-oriented radio show and podcast, Voices of the Sacred Feminine. Her several books include Walking an Ancient Path and Goddess Calling. She can be seen in the award-winning docufilm Femme, Women Healing the World. Karen is an ordained interfaith minister, and she lives in Oregon with her husband. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, thank you so much, Bridget, for having me on the show. I love the name of your podcast, by the way.
Oh, thank you. So how's your day going?
It's going. I've already done 2 Zoom calls and made sure I didn't have any stray cats under my house, and all is well.
Good. Wonderful. Well, we've got a lot to unpack here. So are you ready to get rolling here?
Yep, I'm ready to go.
Okay, so like I usually start my podcast, I always ask my guests, how did your spiritual journey with the goddess begin, and what did that look like for you?
Well, I mean, I don't know how unique it is, but it definitely feels like the trajectory was certainly unexpected from where I began, which was living in the southern United States, which is the Bible Belt. And you never hear about goddess in the Bible Belt. You might hear about Mary, but she's the more benign and passive, but you don't hear about goddesses or especially empowered goddesses. So, it was quite a deconstruction for me, who grew up as a Catholic. But when I left Louisiana, because I was born and raised in New Orleans, when we left Louisiana for California, I discovered a feminine face of God, particularly Isis, and then later Sekhmet. Those were my primary goddesses and still are. And, it was a slippery slope from there. I started leading sacred tours, writing books, and then I realized, what an important aspect goddess as archetype and ideal was to help us make the world a better place. So I've
Hmm.
been teaching about that since the 90s.
Oh, wow. So did you study women's studies in college or mythology or?
Actually, by the time I was out of school, honestly, I don't even know if there was a women's studies class offered in New Orleans, quite frankly. I am an independent scholar. My own intellectual curiosity has taken me down all of these paths. That's not to say, I haven't studied with, organized, pagan groups that had, their own, curriculums for a few years. That's what I ended up doing.
Yeah.
Reformed Congregation of the Goddess, Fellowship of Isis, different places like that. But
Mhm.
then, followed my own interests basically.
Yeah. So when did you become interested in writing and the power of words?
Well, it was pretty early on, to tell you the truth, because when I realized what a profound impact learning about the sacred feminine was for me, and I was appalled that I didn't learn about it until I was 30. I thought, of all the women I grew up with who didn't know about a feminine face of God, and I thought, you know what? I have to do everything possible to share this information so that more women and men learn about it. And it started when I kind of married that interest I just described with my interest in travel. So I started writing travel stories, and I was introducing people to Goddess through the back door of sacred travel sites.
Ah, okay. You started leading tours with other women to these sacred sites?
It was there were mixed groups because my husband has really been the wind beneath my wings for decades, and he's always been supportive in everything we've done. Starting our ICM and writing books and all of that. I can't tell you the meals he's cooked. When I was sitting up at the computer trying to make a deadline. But no, it would be mixed groups though, but
Mhm.
primarily women. And yeah, we led tours to Egypt, Israel, Turkey, France, England, quite a number. Greece,
Hmm.
24 days in Greece. And then there's the tours he and I took alone, before we actually then came back home and put a tour together and brought other women with us. But, I want to say I was kind of a pioneer, with the exception of maybe Carol Christ, who was doing tours on Crete. Women weren't doing sacred goddess tours yet. So I think I was one of the first to do that, as well as have a Divine Feminine podcast.
Yeah. And we'll get to that in a minute here, but I was wondering, okay, so from your sacred tours, you decided to write books on the goddess or divine feminine. So that's how that kind of evolved.
Yeah, yeah, it
Okay.
did. I started off, the first book I published was Sacred Places of Goddess, 108 Destinations. That was the first book. And then the second book was more about incorporating Goddess as a spirituality into your life or into your community. Travel book, kicked it all off and made the other books easier to publish.
Hmm. And you've published quite a few, several books. And I have a Goddess Calling, Inspirational Messages and Meditations of Sacred Feminine Liberation Theology.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
mouthful.
yeah. And so what inspired you to write this book? Is it
Well,
just evolution of,
I was asked to do something, akin to like a Sunday service, kind of like Goddess Church.
uh-huh.
And I did that for quite a long time. And we had a structure, and I had to create a sacred message, and I had to create a meditation. So what I did was, after about 2 years of that, I thought, well, why waste this? Why not make it available to people who want to maybe create their own ritual but don't have the time or the interest or the know-how to put a ritual together? And they could just open the book, follow the format, and plug in the sacred messages and use the meditations. So it's ready-made ritual right there.
Yeah. No, that's great. I I would have appreciated that back in 2010 when I started my Moon Goddess Circle. It was like
Yeah. Yeah,
I learned by doing, and also I was in a Dianica circle for 10 years before that. But so I learned a lot about how to, create ritual and meditation and sacred messages and how to lead other women. But it's definitely, I didn't know that your book was out there. I could have really used that.
well, and also too, I cover topics in that book that, might not be like, for instance, what is your real wealth and what are the metrics for success? And I sort of tie in some of the abundance and manifestation goddesses into that sort of spiritual psychology, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so it's sort of a mixture of self-help, women's empowerment, goddess, spiritual psychology, sort of all gets mixed into there.
Yeah, I like that term, spiritual psychology. Because that ties in with so much of what the goddess spiritual movement is. I mean, we think of goddesses and we work with them. That really it develops our psychology and it puts us in a different wavelength, a theta brain state, and very healing on many levels, psychological, emotional levels. So I'm glad you brought that term up.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think until you fall into this alternative spirituality that I hope one day is very mainstream and it is rising every day. I think so many people, when they hear goddess, they don't think beyond maybe the Greek goddesses they learned about in grade school. They have no idea how relevant they are. Women don't know what they have missed by not having a feminine face of God. Men as well, we've all been damaged by patriarchy. And, so it's really important to understand what's been missing from our society
Hmm.
because, anthropologists and sociologists will tell you that societies that grow up without a feminine face of God or societies where women don't fare as well. And that's really important for us to know because even as women, some of us have this internalized misogyny. And, I think Goddess helps crack that nut, so to speak, and helps us understand her as archetype and, not just
Yeah.
deity in the heavens, but values, ideals, archetypes, role models for women.
Yeah, and we definitely don't grow up in the classroom learning about the goddess. It's kept out of our school books, or for sure mine. I didn't know about it. I grew up Catholic as well and only knew about Mary until I was, late teens. So we don't know. We have to find out ourselves almost.
Yeah, we don't know what we don't know. We don't even know the questions to ask. And I mean, and there's so much changed for me once I found Goddess. I shifted away from being a racist. I mean, I'll just say it like it is. I used to be somebody who watched Fox News, believe it or not, and thought, well,
Oh no.
and yeah, and when I say that because I think it's important for us all to know that we can change when we're
Yeah.
educated. And but that's what it takes. It takes exposure to new ideas and education to understand that maybe what we grew up with, it's not the end all be all. There is,
Yeah.
more perspectives out there in the world and probably healthier ones.
So, what are some key sacred feminine values to help transform society, and how can these values realistically be implemented?
Well, I think one of the first ones I learned about was by way of Riane Eisler, who was one of my mentors, and she wrote the famous book for your listeners. Highly recommend it. Everybody needs to read The Chalice and the Blade.
Hmm.
And, she really made me understand the importance of partnership. And with partnership comes equality. And freedom. Sacred feminine liberation theology is about how the sacred feminine liberates us or sets us free from a dominator culture, which can be patriarchy. It can be other things too. It can be authoritarianism. I mean, a woman can be an authoritarian just like a man can, right?
Right.
So, I think partnership is one of the most important ones because once you embrace partnership, then I think a lot of the others fall into place,
Okay.
like freedom, equality, peace, collaboration. And when we actually start valuing these things rather than power over instead of power with,
Yep.
when we start valuing the we and the us rather the I and the me, then that shifts everything.
Hmm. And
Uh,
also working with nature and the cycles of nature and respecting nature.
Well, that's partnership with nature. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, when you start to learn about partnership, there's five types of partnership. There's partnership with yourself, because a lot of us, we don't have healthy boundaries, and we allow ourselves to be abused, and it's normalized. I mean, look at what's happening right now with the Epstein files,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Right. Right.
So there's partnership with yourself, there's partnership with with your family and your people in your immediate orbit. There's partnership with your community. And how many people grew up in a spiritual community where women were second-class citizens? That's not partnership. That's oppression and domination.
Right.
Um,
So, what does spiritual activism mean to you, and how can it assist in removing abuse and exploitation? Because we are here in the US, we're experiencing a heck of a lot of exploitation, domination, abuse, and it's scary what we're experiencing right now with the Trump administration. So,
it
how,
sure is.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering how goddess spirituality and spiritual activism can help us with, overcoming what we're experiencing.
Well, I think what's really important, and you don't hear about it very much, even when you do start learning from teachers in say, the goddess spiritual community. I think it's really important that we reconcile our spirituality and politics. And to me, that's what sacred activism is. That's a part of it. So if you really want to walk the talk of being a goddess advocate or being a priestess, then you really need to be looking at what her values are and embodying those in the world. So, for instance, you certainly would not be allowing women to be second-class citizens. You would not be for, getting rid of Roe v. Wade, or women's access to contraception, or a woman's right to vote.
Right.
You would be a steward of nature. You would care about climate change. And that means that you would vote for people who would support the things that are important to you. So you obviously wouldn't be voting for Republicans. I'll just
Right.
say
That's
it.
true.
And for the women who do, and even the men, because this is not about our biology. I think this is really about our mindset and our values and our ethics. We really have to sit back and think, what are our values and ethics? I mean, I know growing up in the South, I believed that I believed in white supremacy, because I didn't know any better, right?
Right.
And I think
Mm.
the lack of education really hurts us. Just like, maybe women who spend their whole life in, evangelical Christianity or some other type of religion.
Mormonism, the Mormon church.
Yes, yes, exactly. And when and really it's about all of our boats floating, it's about dignity and respect. And it's not about hierarchy, but patriarchy and domination, they're all about hierarchy. Bernie Sanders, for instance, he always talks about the 1% versus the 99%.
Mhm.
And we see how billionaires, probably bought Trump the last election, and
Yeah.
where that's headed. It's not headed anywhere good for people who don't make tons of money. It's getting worse and worse. And these are, in the goddess values and politics really, in my mind, go hand in glove, because you can't be a true goddess advocate if you don't care about somebody, even if they're in another city, being picked up by people wearing masks and thrown into a van and deported for no reason, just because their color skin is a different color than yours. So, we really have to sit back and think, what are our values and our ethics?
Mhm. Mhm. And
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 honestly,
activate those. That's
yeah,
the key, right? We have to activate and implement those. about
Yes, and all of the spiritual bypassing out there, we have to recognize it for the avoidance techniques that it really is. Because, I run into women that say, "Oh, I just want to envelop myself in love and throw love and compassion at every problem." But that's really because they don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to get their hands dirty. Maybe they don't want to risk somebody's not going to buy their book or take their class because their politics is different. But at some point, we really have to stand up for our values and what kind of world we want.
absolutely. And now is the time. What do you think the future of goddess spirituality looks like?
Well, I'll tell you, I went through a rough patch between 2018 and 2021 when my husband fell and hit his head, and I was caring for him, recovering from a brain injury. And during that time, I had to go off the grid. And just before I kind of went off the grid and had to put my podcast and all on hiatus, I was really worried about goddess spirituality because it felt like it was diminishing to me. But I have to say, when I came back into the world, when Roy was doing better and had recovered, I discovered the Divine Feminine app and the woman who created it, Karen McRandall. And
Mhm.
I was amazed at how Goddess had just flourished. And it just filled me with such hope. Now, I will say that I'm a little bit disappointed because I feel like there's a lot of dilution,
Yeah,
it's a little bit
right.
diluted. You know,
Online and yeah, via the
yeah.
online media and social media,
Yeah.
it kind of waters it down. It's not
It
instant.
does.
It's
And some women it's I don't know, it feels very selfish, and then some people will think, "Oh, it's just about beautiful clothes and looking like a goddess." So
right.
there's this very shallow aspect of it that's not really goddess spirituality, but at least the idea of it is breaking through to the mainstream, and that provides the opportunity for more people to look deeper and make it into something that's at their core, which then I hope translates into the choices they make, whether it be the jobs they do or how they treat people or who they vote for.
And tying in the sacred feminine values into their life.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
what is the Voices of the Sacred Feminine podcast, and what is its purpose? And I know it's been a radio show, and now it's transitioned to a podcast. So, what is your podcast about? What's its purpose?
Well, when I first started out in 2009, and the archives are, believe it or not, all still all there, I was interviewing a new guest every week. I interviewed Noam Chomsky, Vandana Shiva, Lee Starhawk, of course, Riane Eisler, leaders in the goddess community. Uh, but I look,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Matthew Fox, Frank Schaefer, a lot of people I was actually able to interview. And, it was my guilty pleasure. I learned so much from these people as well. It was like continuing education for me. And this goes back to my belief and mission to teach people about the sacred feminine, about this big umbrella of deity archetypes and ideals that are under the goddess umbrella, because you know what? There are so many people that we could have as allies because we have common values and goals. Who would have thought Noam Chomsky would have been on my show, right?
Right.
Off the top of your head, you can't imagine why would he come on a Divine Feminine podcast? Well, it's the values, right?
Yeah, right.
And so it started out me doing interviews, and I shifted gears about a year and a half ago. I honestly, I kind of got a little bored with it, and I felt like I'd covered everything I wanted to cover, and there wasn't a lot new that I was finding. And one of my friends said, well, rather than just stopping your podcast, you have so much written. You have so much of your own wisdom. Why don't you start sharing, your wisdom as a thought leader? So
Right.
that's what I started doing. I started making the podcasts a little bit shorter snippets because it's just me talking about different ideas, values. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's serious, sometimes it's a meditation, sometimes it's about a goddess, but it all fits under the divine feminine umbrella.
Excellent. I want to make sure that people know what your website, your social media is so that li our listeners can find out more about you, your books, and your podcasts and all your offerings.
Okay. Well, sort of the hub of everything is my website, which is karentate.net. If you go there, you will find a lot of my old podcasts. However, if you go to Spreaker.com, that's where all the old archives live.
Hmm.
So if you want to really like go back and catch all of these these interviews from all of our older foremothers and way showers,
Yeah, I'd love
women
to.
and men, yeah, they're all there. You just go back, go through the history on Spreaker. But yeah, the website it's lots of interviews that I've done like this. It's interviews I've done with other people, talks that I've given, classes that I've given. All my books are there. My newsletter is there. So yeah, so I still give talks out in the community. I have lists of the topics that I'm available to speak to groups on. So yeah, and you can always reach out to me from there as well.
Okay. And then are you on Instagram and Facebook and social media as well?
Yeah. I dabbled a little bit at Instagram, but I don't know. It was just too cumbersome because you couldn't put links on it, easily. So I'm kind of mostly right now. I have two pages on Facebook. One's my author page, and one's my personal page, Karen
Uh-huh.
Tate and Karen Tate author.
Okay.
But I am going to be expanding that pretty soon with a couple new books that are coming out.
Ooh, exciting.
Yep.
Yeah, and briefly, do you have any upcoming plans for the future, like new books, workshops, events?
Yeah. Well, I do have a new book coming out through Collective Ink called Divine Feminine Deity Archetype and Ideal. And I'm getting ready to pitch them on a companion book to that. And I actually lead a group every week where I live. The first week of the month, I lead a group here locally in Southern Oregon called Wisdom Circle, where
Uh-huh.
we talk about an assortment of different esoteric topics. The second week of the month, I lead something called Women Weaving the World. It's more of a goddess ritual. The third week of the month, I facilitate a salon with the local Democrats, and I teach women about social and cultural issues like misogyny, feminism. Like recently, we had the allegory of Plato's cave, learning about perspective. And then the fourth week of the month, I'm starting a new thing called Storytelling with Goddess, and I'm going to be introducing a new goddess every month to the people here in the community that want to learn about it.
Ah, okay. So that's all those events are in person in where is it? Ashland, Oregon?
Actually, Grants Pass.
Grants
Yes,
Pass,
those are
Oregon. Okay,
those
got
are
it.
local. Those are local. Yeah.
But you also have an online presence on YouTube, is that correct?
Yeah, I do have I have talks on YouTube. You can find some of my talks and interviews on, under the podcast section of my website. I do webinars now and again. So yeah, my time's pretty full.
Yeah, sounds like it. No, that's great. my listeners on this podcast are from all over the world. So mostly US, but also UK, Europe, South America, North, everywhere. So
Well, I would
Austra
love to hear from
Australia,
them.
Canada. So yeah, I want to make sure they can reach, you via your social media and your website and anything online too.
Well, and I'll give you my email address because I love to hear from, people who are interested in the stuff that we're talking about. And it's my name, it's Karen Tate 108 at yahoo.com. Please pop me an email.
Ah, excellent. Thank you for giving that out. Thank you so much for being on the show and talking to us and for all your powerful work in service to the goddess and to preserve the sacred feminine. Blessed be. And thank you to all our listeners for joining us here today. And thanks again, Karen.
Thank you for inviting me, Bridget.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.